Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
Smooth T20 is back for its 10th anniversary, and as usual, the best cricketers in the Caribbean will be in Antigua to take part in the region's premier local white ball competition. The action will take place from April 13th to 29th at the Sir Vivian Richards Cricket Stadium. The Jennings Tigers, Bethesda Golden Eagles, Boland's Blasters, Empire Nation, New Winthrop's Lions, All Saints Pythons, and Pigot's Crushers will try their best to dethrone the Liberta Blackhawks. The cool and smooth T20 is back, and it's bigger and better than ever. You can't afford to miss a single ball.
Yes, people. Welcome to another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm your host, or one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick here, and welcome back, people. Today's date at the time of recording is Thursday, the 30th of March, 2023. And it's, how many days? Let me look at my notes. It's 2 days, 2 full days, well over 48 hours since West Indies pulled off a fantastic 2-1 series victory in the T20 series against the South Africans in South Africa. There's been a lot written, there's been a lot said, there's been a lot of rejoicing. There's been a lot of this is the rebirth of the West Indies T20 side chat, etc., etc. And I just wanted to bide my time. I didn't want to rush into anything. I didn't want to rush into some big analysis where it's like, yeah, West Indies are back now and so on. I wanted to just breathe. Sometimes after West Indies play a game, you just got to let things marinate. You got to let them swill around in your head. You got to gather your thoughts. You got to think back over what you just watched, and then kind of assess what were the key learning points from all this. So what I've done is I've written down the top 5 talking points or top 5 takeaways from this tour of South Africa. So yeah, I'm going to go through them. By all means, as usual, if you're watching this on on YouTube, etc., get in the comments below. If you're listening to this on the pod platform of your choosing, then at us at Carib Cricket, Twitter and Instagram. Join us on our Facebook group, Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and all of that jazz, and let me know your thoughts. If you don't know, by the way, we have joined. I don't know if I said this in our last video. We have officially joined the Sports Social Podcast Network. So you can now get our podcast through Megaphone. I'll put the kind of link to that in the description below. Thank you to everybody who's already been downloading episodes since we moved over to that podcast network. Unbelievable number of downloads. Unbelievable number of downloads since we moved across to the Sports Social Podcast Network. So thank you to everyone who's been supporting the wave there. I think it was a good move. It was definitely a good move for us to join that particular network. So look in the description below to understand a bit more about that. So the key talking points, let's get right into it. Talking point number 1 from the West Indies 2-1 victory against South Africa in South Africa. This is going to trigger some people. The Hyperbole. The first talking point, people, I'm calling it the Hyperbole. And bear with me. I should start with a big positive, and I think I did when at the top of the show I kind of said, wow, fantastic 2-1 victory. And in fact, actually, let me give you a few more statistical assessments of that particular series victory in terms of the importance of it. That was only our 4th T20 series victory in our last 12 bilateral series. And in the midst of those 12 bilateral series, there were 2 disastrous World Cups in a row, 2021 and 2022. And this was only our 3rd away T20 series bilateral series victory since 2018. So we've only won 3 away bilateral series since 2018. That's a 6-year gap. 6 years, 5 years, roughly, actually, I should say. Away against Bangladesh in 2018, away against Sri Lanka in 2020, just before COVID struck, and then obviously a couple of days ago, sealing the victory against the South Africans. So this is a momentous victory for the West Indies in the context of our poor T20 recent history. And I think it's been hard for the West Indies because when we won in 2012, and then obviously when we won in 2016 again, Carlos Brathwaite, remember the name and all of that, for 5 years after that 2016 World Cup victory, everybody kept calling us the world champions. And we were, in so much as we were the incumbent champions. But when you go back and look at it, between 2016 and then the World Cup failure in 2021, that was a 5-year gap between T20 World Cups, right? And I think we were always, and Santoki and I said this on pod, remember, we said this, in the kind of like looking for the ashes of the first failure in 2021, and then obviously in 2022, I think the same message was clear. Everyone referred to us as kind of world beaters in this version of the game without acknowledging that the game had probably passed us by 2021. We went with the old guard in 2021. We tried to get the band back together to try and do something special. It didn't work. 2022, we disbanded all the old guard. Most of them retired. We went with the young blood, and it didn't work in even more tragic circumstances, in so much as not even making it to the main stage of the competition and getting knocked out of the tournament, losing to Scotland, losing to Ireland, etc. So with that said and done, this is why I've called the first talking point the hyperbole. Don't fall for it. The easy thing to do after this 2-1 T20 series bilateral victory against South Africa is to say West Indies are back. That's the easy thing to do. And I'm imploring all West Indians, don't fall into the trap. It's not every time. And we know, I note that we do this in regional cricket when someone scores 100 or somebody takes a fifer. In Test cricket, when we beat someone, usually when we beat England at home. ODI cricket, we never win. But one thing that West Indians have become synonymous for, when following the West Indies, and particularly the men's side, is that whenever we do something good, everyone quickly rushes to say, we're back. West Indies are going to turn a corner. This could be the new dawn. I'm not falling for all that. No. I'm not falling for that. That could never be me. This is a fantastic victory, but all I see this as is building blocks. That's all I see it as. We have a home World Cup approximately what? It's going to be approximately just over a year from now, a year and a few months from now. Every time we play T20 cricket, I'm imploring all West Indian fans to just see the games as building blocks. Look for what little takeaways can we take from can we take away from each game we play. And what I liked about this series was every game we played, from the first one, which we won, the second one, which we got hammered in, not hammered, but the South Africans chased down 258, to the third one, there was always some nuggets of learning to take away, but in the kind of ethos of we're building. And I think most rational West Indian fans were doing that. They weren't like being like, oh, this team is a rux, or this team is brilliant. I think everybody watched each game and went, okay, some good stuff's happening there. We can take some stuff away from this. Oh, we've seen this, and that's some positives over there. But once we won the series, I immediately saw too much West Indies are back chat. Stop all that, please. I beg everyone, please stop that. Building blocks only. That's all we should be talking in. That's all we should be couching our language in as we try and head towards a home World Cup where there will be a lot of pressure on this side to perform in front of our own fans. So no hyperbole for me. That's talking point number one, or takeaway number one. Takeaway number two, Rothmans captaincy. When Nicholas Pooran stepped down as West Indies white ball captain across both formats, we all wondered whether Rothman would get the ODI captaincy and the T20 captaincy. As it was, Cricket West Indies probably made the sensible decision in hindsight to give the ODI captaincy to Shai Hope and the T20 captaincy to Rothman Powell. What we saw across this series, irrespective of the second T20 where the South Africans chased down 259, what we saw across this series was all of the hallmarks that Rothman had shown as captain for the Talawars in CPL, for the Jamaica Talawars in CPL, and for the Jamaica Scorpions in Super 50, winning captain across both formats of cricket. And what I saw in this series was fearless captaincy. He didn't always get everything right. For example, the video I did after the second T20, I spoke about the fact that I didn't agree with Rothman only bowling Sheldon for 1 over in the second T20. And I spoke about how I felt if you've got a strike bowler, you have to trust your strike bowler. So Rothman, I'm not saying this as, Rothman can do no wrong. But in the same hand, on the same hand, in that second T20, I spoke about how I liked the fact that Rothman said in his post-match press conference, I bowled Raymond Reefer for 4 overs because I believed that Raymond had bowled so well when we asked him to bowl that it was his day. And I think I can't remember what Raymond's exact wicket was. Let me try and remember what Raymond did again in that second. He went, did he 2 wickets, or was it 2 wickets or 1 wicket? I think he went 4 overs, 1 for 44 or something like that. It might have even been less than that. It might have been 4 overs, 1 for 40 or something like that. And I think in the context of what was a kind of record-breaking T20 chase from the South Africans, it was impressive from Raymond Reefer. And not many people would have had the guts to tell Raymond Reefer to bowl his allocation in that second T20. And I think that's a hallmark of Rothman's captaincy. And then we saw it in the third T20. Everybody wondered, what are we going to do at the death? The South Africans admittedly had a steep chase in the back end, and we bowled really well to make sure they didn't chase down the 2-2-1 to win. But who had Raymond Reefer down to bowl the death over? Who had him to bowl the final over? I think most of us looked at that last T20 and we just assumed, right, he's going to give it to Sheldon Cottrell because Alzarri had bowled out, Romario Shepherd had bowled out, Jason Holder had bowled out. So we all looked at Cottrell, who I think had 1 left, and we all just assumed, well, boy, I guess Rothman's going to turn to Sheldon. And there was panic because a lot of us don't believe Sheldon is a death bowler, right? But out of the blue, he turns to Raymond Reefer, and Raymond Reefer held his nerve. I think he only went for, what was it, 13 runs or whatever it might have been. And even that, the last ball was just a giveaway 4 because there was no way South Africa, the equation had got out of hand for South Africa, right? And again, I see that as fearless captaincy from Rothman Powell. In some quarters, I've seen it described as aggressive captaincy. I've always wanted my West Indian captains to not just let the game drift. And that's why I like Rothman. I think Rothman is prepared to try things. I think in the second ODI, he saw, and this is all, I always said this was like a hallmark of Pollard's captaincy. When Rothman saw the game was getting away in the second ODI, he just bowled himself. He wasn't afraid to take the ball and say, you know what, let me try and bowl us back into this game. And that's why I always like Pollard's captaincy. Pollard didn't wait for the game to get away. If things weren't going right, he was prepared to say, give me the ball, let me bowl my off-cutters into the pitch and see what I can do. And Pollard wasn't the most successful of captains. He wasn't the greatest of all captains. But what he was prepared to do was gamble. He was prepared to try and get ahead of the game and not let the game dictate to him what he should or shouldn't do. And that's all we can ask for from Rothman. So Rothman Powell's captaincy, forget the result. I think irrespective of the series result, there were lots of positive elements to Rothman Powell's captaincy. It's not the finished article. We can talk about using bowlers, this, that, and the other. He can only work with the resources that he's got. But so far, and it's not about comparing Pooran to Powell, but so far we can say that Rothman Powell's ascent to captaincy has gone well. Third takeaway, do we have the core of a settled squad now? And again, this kind of links to point number 1. Let's not fall for the hyperbole. Let's not be like, okay, this is the T20 side going forward. But there is a reasonable argument to say, and I said it in the video after the second T20, there's a reasonable argument to say after this series that the West Indies definitely now know their top 6. It doesn't mean that people won't succumb to bad form. It doesn't mean that some people won't be able to work their way in. But I think I'm going to repeat this top 6 again and get at me in the comments below. Do you think any of this top 6 can realistically hold a drop anytime in the near future? King, Mayers, Charles, Pooran, Powell. Who am I missing? That's your top 5. Who was your 6th bowler? Pooran, 6th bowler, 6th batter. Pooran, Powell, and I guess then you're looking at like your Romero Shepherds or a Raymond Reefer, etc. Certainly, maybe top 6 is a stretch, but certainly the top 5 is set. So I'll say that again. King, Mayers, Charles, Pooran, Powell. That top 5 is set. I don't think there's anyone in the Caribbean who would realistically look at coming out of this series, look at that top 5 and go, yeah, we have to drop that, man. I think everyone's willing to give that top 5 a go. So already we got a core, I would say, of a settled top 5. There's arguments about 6, 7, and 8. Obviously, I think Romero Shepard's in there. Sorry, Jason Holder's in there. But then there's still some places where it's like, is Raymond Reefer a lock? I don't know. Sorry, people, caught something in my throat. So there's a few question marks about 6, 7, and 8. And then in terms of the ball, Alzarri, well, I'll get on to Alzarri Joseph in a minute, but he's a lock. Sheldon Cottrell is probably a lock, certainly in the sense of a squad position, irrespective of Obed McCoy's ability to also bowl left arm seam, but probably with far more variations than Sheldon. Because of Sheldon's ability up front in the power play, he's probably a lock as well, right? So you got Alzarri, you got Sheldon, you got Akil. All those 3 are a lock in the squad. Doesn't mean they'll always play in the 11, but they're a lock. So I've given you 5 batters who are a lock. Holder and Shepherd, who are probably a lock. So that's 6, 7 players. And then 3 bowlers. Akil, Alzarri, and Sheldon are probably a lock. That's 10 players where I can straight away say we have the core of something to work with. It doesn't mean they're going to become T20 world beaters, but it should mean that we aren't going in for the next year of cricket. What went wrong in 2021, apart from the fact that we got the band back together, is people felt we went into that World Cup making a few too, like Ravi Rampal suddenly got back into the squad, for example, right? Having not featured in the summer. So, and coming out of the 2022 World Cup, remember that the independent report said West Indies, to maximize their white ball ability, should be the kind of selectors, director of cricket, etc., should be meeting with a core of players and saying, we're working with you all the way up to the 2024 World Cup. Well, I've just given you 10 who, if they actually follow the report and do what Justice Thompson said and Brian Lara and Mickey Arthur, well, you've got 10 already who should formulate part of your core. But what I've written down in my notes, which I think everyone should also consider, is just who's just outside that squad. So in this squad to South Africa, 2 players didn't even get a game. Shamar Brooks was in the squad. I forgot Shamar Brooks was even in this T20 squad. So he didn't get a game. And remember, before people say, of course, he didn't get a game, remember that Shamar Brooks did actually fire for the Talawars in CPL. And Yannick Correa didn't get a game. Whether Yannick, I mean, there's a big argument to say, what is Yannick Correa even doing there? Remember, he made it into the 2022 World Cup squad out of nowhere, having played no T20 cricket. So there are certain question marks about players who are on the outside looking in, who potentially would feel in a squad of 15 there are positions available. I'm just going to call 4. Neither one, and none of them are Sunil Narayan, and none of them are Andre Russell. I'm not even going to bother getting into that argument because people get in the comments and cuss me, send me at me on Twitter and say what you're talking about. So I'll leave that for now. Here's 4 names that probably from the outside looking in, we should definitely be considering as well. Obed McCoy, Fabian Allen. Remember him? Fabian Allen, Shimron Hetmeyer, and Evan Lewis. Now, before you all get angry and start bashing on your keyboard and saying, what do I mean? What do you mean you're calling Shimron's name and so on and so forth? I'm just saying that if any of those 4 players show any level of significant form between now and the 2024 World Cup, they should be in whatever a West Indies squad is considered to be. There is no way on earth you leave out a Shimron Hetmyer if he gets his head together, shows willingness and commitment, and is in good form. Same goes for Evan Lewis. It doesn't mean they have to play. I'm just talking about a squad. Hetmyer, Lewis, Fabian Allen, Obed McCoy. Get at me in the comments below, at me at Twitter and Instagram if you disagree. But I think that those are the immediate names on the outside that I would also be looking at. Talking point number 4, takeaway number 4, the rise and rise of Alzarri Joseph. I'll never forget. I wish I could remember who it was, but I'll never forget that person who messaged me after an episode that I recorded where I said Alzarri has found his true form. It was about 6 months ago. I think I said it. And I said, Alzarri's really coming into his own. He's going to, I think, and then I went on to say he's going to be the pack leader for the West Indies sooner rather than later. Are you entertained now? Are you convinced now? Are you seeing what I was saying? Alzarri Joseph, in the just on this tour alone of Zimbabwe and South Africa, maiden T20 fifer, international, maiden Test fifer, obviously international. But more importantly, you take Alzarri Joseph's form over the last year and a bit in Tests, ODIs where he was already a gun bowler anyway, and now T20s, he is the guy. I can't keep it any more complex than that. He is the guy. He was the best bowler in this T20 series across both teams, and he only played 2 matches, 6 wickets for 61 runs, an average of 10, economy of 10. I mean, what more do you want me to say? He was the best bowler in the team, and he was a fantastic bowler in the Test series as well. We are witnessing the coming of age of Alzarri Joseph as an all-format cricketer. If I was being hypercritical, the only thing I would say to Alzarri, and I said it after the Test series or during the Test series, Alzarri, if he wanted to, could be a very good lower order all-rounder. I'm fine if he doesn't become that, because he's a fantastic bowler in and of his own right, and his skill set with the ball is such that anything he does with the bat is a bonus. But such is the skill set. I always remember that, I can't remember which tour it was, but I went to a press conference and I asked Alzarri, what does he consider himself? And he said, I'm an all-rounder, which is why I cussed him during the Test series and said, well, I know Alzarri considers himself an all-rounder, so why is he giving his wicket away so easily with reckless shots? I'd love to know if Alzarri is still planning to prove that he could be an all-rounder. But even if you never get there, Alzarri, even if you're only a guy who only ever averages, I don't know, 11 with the bat in Test cricket or something, what you are doing with the ball is nothing short of magnificent. And we should be, as West Indian fans, we should just be giving Alzarri his flowers for his continued rise over the last year across all formats of cricket. Flowers for Alzarri Joseph. And my final talking point, Romero Shepherd is winning the contest with Dean Smith. Now, some of you will say, what contest? Well, the contest was what I alluded to after the video after the second T20, where I said, and in fairness, I've been saying this for a while, Romero Shepherd and Dean Smith should not play in the same side. I think when you play them both in a West Indies side, you're losing something. You're not gaining something. I think you're losing something, whether it be, and I don't know, I was about to say whether it be a batter or bowler, but in reality, we're losing in the bowling. My critique has always been that you cannot trust Romero and Dean to bowl their full allocation. You can maybe trust one out of the two to maybe do 3/4 of the job they should do with the ball, but you can't trust both. Now, obviously, both of them are in the side because of what they offer with the bat. So I think Dean Smith we see as a lower order, powerful finisher, batting all-rounder, right? But how often does he get to bat, and does he do enough with the ball to compensate for that? Romero Shepherd's a bit more difficult because I think Romero Shepherd is a genuine all-rounder. He is a genuine frontline bowler in domestic cricket. If he was available to play red ball, he would bowl. ODIs for Guyana, he bowls significantly. In fact, so does Dean in the last season. And obviously T20s, we've seen Romero bowl quite significantly. Romario is a better bowler than Dean Smith. I'd argue that Romario is a smarter bowler than Dean Smith. But Romario's confidence took a knock in the last year and a bit because every time they kept trying him at the death, he was getting licked down in international cricket. But arguably on top of that, Romario's batting is better than Dean Smith. So, and we saw in this series how important Romario can be with both bat and ball. So with the bat, he was the fourth highest run scorer across both teams, 88 runs at a strike rate of 191, 3 4s, 7 6s, and that's across 3 innings. Ended not out in 2 of them. Highest score of 44 not out, I think, which was off 19 balls. But more impressively for Romario, he only took 1 wicket. But in terms of economy, where is he? In terms of economy, Romario had the second best economy in the West Indies side. And this was a high-scoring series, remember, certainly the second and the third game. Romario's economy across the 3 games was 10.98. Only Alzarri Joseph had a better economy than that in the West Indies team. He had one of 10.16. I'm happy with that. And that's what, actually, some will say Chase was better, but Chase didn't take a wicket. He actually had an economy of 10.75, but Chase only bowled 4 overs. Romario bowled 10, right? If Romario can get his bowling to be effective like that, and when I say effective, I mean in terms of economy. Some of you will get confused and say, Mash, an economy of 11 is not effective. In the context of that series where South Africa scored 213 in the third game and 259 in the second game, I can take that. I think that's actually very good in the wider, grander scheme of things. But going back to the original point, if you put Romario and Oldine in the same side, the net impact for West Indies, in my opinion, is a negative impact. I don't think the gain that West Indies think we're getting by playing both is actually realistic. And I think we get a better gain by putting in a specialist bowler or batter, whatever it is of the makeup of what West Indies are going for. I think you gain more by going for the specialist rather than going for both of them. In the final T20, we saw that Romario can do the job without Oldine. 44 off 19 in the back end when West Indies batted, which actually probably won West Indies the match. It gave us that buffer of about 10 to 15 extra runs that we needed to put South Africa under scoreboard pressure. And then, like I say, with the ball in the final T20, I think he only went at 10s in a match where everyone was getting licked down, right? If Romario can do that, and if Romario can replicate that, you don't need Dean Smith. If you play Dean Smith instead of a specialist bowler, then you're asking Dean Smith to have to bowl a minimum of 2 to 3 overs. And what I say to the West Indies think tank is, do they trust him to bowl 2 to 3 overs? If they trust Romario Shepherd to bowl his 2 to 3, and if they're prepared to always give the ball to Romario Shepherd, then you don't pick Dean Smith as well. It's one or the other. And if it is one or the other, Romario's currently winning that particular contest and that particular race. As I said, people, that's just 5 key takeaways from the West Indies T20 series win against the South Africans. I don't expect you all to agree with me, but whatever you think about what I've said, get at me in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast app of your choice, then at us at Carib Cricket, Twitter, Instagram. Find us on Facebook. Just type in Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And as I say goodbye, make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you like, share, and subscribe to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. If you'd like to support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, head to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket, and you too can be somebody who supports the wave and keeps us on the airways, so to speak. I've been Machel St. Patrick here at one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.